Iowa, healthcare, Nancy Pelosi, and the tale of the tapes. Let's bring in our panel tonight. Marc Thiessen is a scholar at the American Enterprise Institute. Marie Harf is a former Obama State Department spokesperson. Both are Fox News contributors. And Brian Lanza is the former communications director for the Trump transition team and managing director at Mercury LLC. All right, first, so is the White House putting together a practically Russia-free week? And what did you think of the president's message? Let's start with you, Marc.
Well, except for that one mention of a witch hunt, this was the first speech or public utterances that Donald Trump has made that made no mention of Russia whatsoever. He was talking about his agenda. He was talking about health care, taxes, infrastructure, jobs, the things people elected him to do. And the way you he's not still to this day, he's not under investigation for collusion with Russia. He believes that there's no collusion. If that is true, then the way you succeed is by flooding the zone with policy wins, by focusing on your agenda, by going out to places like Iowa, rallying the country around his agenda, the things that the forgotten Americans sent him to Washington to do. They didn't send him to Washington to fight with the fake news media or have a big fight with Congress over Russia. They sent him to do these things, to get them to get jobs, to help them with opioid crisis, help them with all these problems. And as long as he focuses on that, he's going to succeed.
You know, it's so interesting to watch, and you were on the communications team, yes, Brian, and we all remember during the campaign, there were times when things would go wildly off track, as I know you well remember, and then he would try to get back to the stuff, back to, I remember you guys saying, we're going to do policy speeches this week, we're going to do this policy speech and that policy speech, and, it helped. It helped to turn him sort of back on focus. Can he do that? And also, is he as upset about all of this as people argue? Because he didn't look that upset last night.
Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me here. Listen, the president has a unique ability to focus when the time comes to it. I think when you look at the policies that he was elected on and you look at the people he's looking to represent in D.C. and drain the swamp, that's always been his focus. What you have is sort of a left-wing media agenda of trying to bring a distraction there with this Russia investigation. What we know now is that this investigation started nearly a year ago from testimony that they started monitoring Carter Page. So in a year's time, we have not one shred of evidence of any collusion.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. We played the David Brooks soundbite last night, but when David Brooks, who really has nothing nice to say about the president, starts going, I'm a little thinking there's nothing there, maybe.
The issue's dead.
Has Democrats gone too far out on a limb counting on this story and wanting it to bring the presidency down?
Well, Donald Trump was clearly in his element last night. And I think for all of us, we saw that. But campaigning is not governing. And if health care doesn't pass the Senate, it's not going to be because of Democrats. It's going to be because the Republican caucus cannot get its act together. So Donald Trump clearly was in a place last night that he's comfortable with. He was talking to voters he's comfortable with. But it still remains to be seen whether his agenda will get passed forward. And he has his base. That is clear. That's not enough to hold the House in 2018, I don't think.
There was one issue that did, dance around the Russia story, and it had to do with whether or not there were tapes from the White House. And we all remember sort of the back and forth from the president. Maybe there are tapes. Maybe there aren't tapes. So here's what he said about this today. Let's put it up. With all of the recently reported electronic surveillance, intercepts, unmasking, and illegal leaking of information, I have no idea, ... whether there are tapes or recordings of my conversations with James Comey, but I did not make and do not have any such recordings. Why? Brian, why does he do this? I mean, that just opened up a huge can of worms. You've got, Adam Schiffer, we're going to talk to in a little while, saying, what does he mean by that? Are there or are there not tapes?
Here's what we know is that him saying that the potential of tapes exist has actually kept Director Comey honest during the testimony. He was able to say, hey, you know what? In fact, the president says that he was told 3 times that he wasn't under any type of investigation. By the very fact that he said he potentially had those tapes, it sort of forced Comey to confirm that he wasn't under any type of federal investigation. It also forced Comey to come back and sort of correct a New York Times story that leaks from the investigation said that there were direct ties between Russia and the administration, and the threat of potential tapes forced Comey to testify that didn't exist.
Would it surprise you if this White House records things when people come in to talk?
Yeah, I'm not surprised if government records everything. I think the modern times sort of says that everything's being watched nowadays. I mean, we know that, like I said, we know that July of 2016 that the FBI started paying attention to Carter Page. So we have been under surveillance for nearly a year. So that exists. Now, does the White House have tapes? I've been to the White House many times. I haven't seen any of those things. I don't operate under the assumption of those exist. But we do know that the tactic that the president said that he may have tapes forced Comey's hand to say publicly 3 times during testimony that there was no evidence of collusion. It also forced him to correct a story that was out there that saying evidence existed in the New York Times and a competitor
So you're saying
network.
if he's bluffing, it worked?
But it also kept the story in the news.
Exactly.
Kept the story in the news.
Kept the story
Exactly.
in the news, and that's not the story the Trump administration wants out there right
All right.
now.
Right.
So as the White House may be finding a bit of new footing, and they're definitely trying to do that this week, Democrat leader Nancy Pelosi is very much on the defensive, growing calls from within her own party for her to hang it up after a bad run of Democrat losses in congressional elections. She, however, remains defiant. Watch.
Why should you keep your job?
So you want me to sing my praises? Is that what you're saying? Why should I? I'm a master legislator. I am a strategic, politically astute leader. When it comes to personal ambition and having fun on TV, have your fun. I love the arena. I thrive on competition. My decision about how long I stay is not up to them.
Woof. She's not happy. And as we just put on the lower third here, if this is according to our Capitol Hill producer, he says that there is a, quote, insurrection among current factions against Pelosi. Marie.
6
that
months
true?
ago, when she ran for leader again, people were scared to come out against her and vote for Tim Ryan. And in the last 24 hours, the number of Democrats who have come out and said her time has passed has grown. I've actually been surprised by it. And I do think it's time for new leadership. I think people like Joe Crowley from Queens right down the road, people like Seth Moulton, a veteran who served in Iraq, understands national security. These are the people that need to step up. I was pretty shocked at how the Democratic caucus has responded. Pleasantly surprised, actually.
Marc, what do you think?
Getting rid of Nancy Pelosi is like treating cancer with a Band-Aid. Okay, she is a symptom of the problem, but she is not the problem. The problem the Democrats have is they are in worse shape than Donald Trump. Washington Post ABC News poll a few weeks ago, just 28% of Americans say the Democratic Party is in touch with the concerns of ordinary Americans, 10 points below Donald Trump. So the Democratic Party has a deep, deep problem, which is that they have lost contact and a connection with the center of the country. There was a Priorities USA, liberal super PAC, put out a study the other day that they lost, that there are between 7 and 9 million Americans who voted for Barack Obama who switched their vote to Donald Trump in the last election. They are not going to solve the problem until they figure out a way to reconnect with those voters. And what they're doing is the opposite. They're pushing them away every single day. They are treating Donald Trump with contempt. And when they treat Donald Trump with contempt, those people feel that they are being treated with contempt, and they will never recover until they stop.
Here's what Donald Trump tweeted about this, because we talk about these kinds of things, tweets all the time. He said, "I certainly hope the Democrats do not force Nancy P. out. That would be very bad for the Republican Party. And please let Crying Chuck stay." Ryan?
Stand with Nancy. I mean, that's all I have to say.
You
I
want
think
Nancy to stick around.
listen, I mean, she is the leader of the party. She's the fundraiser. She is the voice and the face of the Democratic Party. They voted for her. They're going to keep her, and let's have an election. Let's have an election of ideas and of priorities. I'm almost certain that as the voters start to analyze the priorities, they're more aligned with Republican priorities than with the liberal San Francisco priority.
So you don't want them to figure this problem out and bring in a Tim
I think
Ryan or-
Nancy's a great leader for the Democratic Party.
Which is why she may not be there in a few months.
Stand with Nancy.
Thank you very much. Great to see you
Thanks,
all.
Martha.
Good